Hello everyone. Welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, Zelan used the power of imaginary collapse, borrowed from Rimuru, to turn the tables by striking the insect lord Zelanus with a single void fist. Under Zelan's relentless assault, Zelanus was left powerless and on the verge of death. In the end, a defeated Zelanus willingly transferred his ultimate skill Lord of Life to Zelan, breaking the chain of fate between father and son. However, just when everyone relaxed, an unexpected individual appeared and devoured Zelanus's corpse. Of course, it was none other than Vega. In this episode, we'll witness Diablo's furious beating of Vega, Ramiris's panic, and Dino's true strength. So, let's get started. Rewinding time a bit. While everyone was letting their guard down after Zelan's victory over Zelanus, there was still one person lurking in the labyrinth, a malicious figure that Zelan had not managed to kill, Vega. Furious and cursing constantly, Vega had been deeply affected by being looked down upon and defeated by Zelan. Although foolish, Vega holds a deep thirst for survival. More importantly, Vega's luck was unusually strong, on par with Masayuki's. His survival was proof of that. Just as Zelan was about to deliver the final blow, Zelanus intervened, giving Vega a miraculous escape. To heal his injuries, Vega used his ultimate skill Lord of Evil Dragons to take root in the labyrinth, constantly absorbing power. Vega's luck continued to work in his favor. Despite Ramiris initially isolating this layer, Zelanus's violent intrusion reconnected the upper and lower layers, allowing Vega to accidentally come into contact with the labyrinth's core. Ordinarily, this abnormality should have been detected immediately. But at the time, all the labyrinth's monitoring personnel were focused on the massive threat that Zelanus posed, leaving Vega's actions unnoticed. In fact, no one even realized Vega was still alive. As mentioned earlier, due to the layer's isolation, Ramiris and the others couldn't witness the battle between Zelan and Vega. The information they had was relayed through Zelan's thought communication. By some inexplicable stroke of luck, Vega narrowly survived. And now, his luck had struck again. Because of his injuries, Vega's presence had become incredibly faint. Coupled with the chaotic magical fluctuations caused by Zelan's immense power, the group's magic sensing was thrown off, allowing Vega to sneak in unnoticed. Zelan, supported by Apito, walked off the arena after the battle, leaving only Zelanus's corpse behind. Vega instinctively felt a sense of danger, suspecting it might be a trap, but quickly dismissed the thought. As long as he devoured Zelanus's corpse, Vega believed he would gain his power, and even Zelan wouldn't be able to rival him. After all, Zelan, having just finished that epic battle, appeared utterly exhausted, and his movements were noticeably less precise. Now wasn't the time for hesitation. Go big or go home, Vega decided to take a gamble. Vega unleashed 4 evil dragon beasts, sending them in different directions. One charged toward Diablo but was instantly reduced to dust, even unable to regenerate. Another inexplicably wandered into another layer of the labyrinth, while the remaining 2 wreaked havoc in this layer, causing chaos. But this didn't matter. Vega's true goal was to draw attention away from himself. His real target was, of course, Zelanus's corpse in the center of the arena. Vega then attacked Zelanus's corpse, activating Infinite Eater, with malevolent intent revealing its fangs. Diablo immediately reacted, entering battle mode, and Zelan did the same. However, Zelan was still in the process of assimilating the powers inherited from Zelanus, and his body had suffered from the backlash of imaginary supply. Just standing was already a feat, and Zelan was on the verge of falling into a pre-evolution slumber at any moment. Meanwhile, Dino and his companions sluggishly responded, engaging in a difficult fight against the 2 rampaging evil dragon beasts. As usual, Dino had his excuses. This time, he lamented that he had given his mythical weapon Huga to Zelan, claiming that without a weapon, he couldn't fight properly. Upon hearing this, Pico sarcastically remarked that Dino was treating his companions like fools, while Gracia threatened that if Dino didn't show his true strength, she wouldn't forgive him. The scene shifted to Diablo. The sharp-minded Diablo quickly realized that Dino's side could be left alone for now. The priority was eliminating the real threat, Vega. Standing before Vega, Diablo smirked and requested that Zelan leave Vega to him. Zelan, knowing that pushing himself further would be pointless, nodded and, with Apito's help, retreated from the battlefield. On the other side, having absorbed Zelanus's corpse, Vega once again became full of himself, marveling at Zelanus's unmatched power. Feeling the strength within him, which was now several times greater than before, Vega's eyes glowed red with excitement as he shouted triumphantly. He arrogantly proclaimed to Diablo that if Diablo swore allegiance to him, he would spare his life. In Vega's mind, Zelan was the only opponent worth fearing, and with Zelan now exhausted, this was the perfect time to kill him. So, Vega didn't want to waste time on Diablo. Based on Vega's assessment, although Diablo had easily destroyed his evil dragon beast, it was clear from his earlier struggle against Zelanus that Diablo had been in trouble. Now that Vega had absorbed Zelanus's corpse, he believed he could easily defeat Diablo. Vega's ultimate goal was, of course, to devour Zelan and gain more power, ensuring his own victory. For this reason, he thought of recruiting Diablo first. However, Vega's words only left Diablo speechless. With a puzzled expression, Diablo asked Vega if he was underestimating him. Not even Feldway or Zelanus had dared to belittle Diablo like this, but somehow, Vega had managed to do it, throwing Diablo into a deep state of confusion. Vega's scorn wasn't just an insult to Diablo's pride, it crossed a line that Diablo could never forgive. To Diablo, insulting Ramiris-sama was a grave offense, but being underestimated was equally intolerable. Unwittingly, Vega had touched upon Diablo's deepest nerve. And then it got worse. Vega, excitedly cheering, declared that the arrogant, foolish slime had likely been destroyed by Feldway by now, so it was the right time for the demon to serve a new master. Before Vega could even finish his sentence, he tasted the dirt beneath him. In an instant before he could grasp what had happened, he was slammed into the ground, his face buried deep into the earth. Vega was utterly shocked, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. Diablo sneered, remarking that all that ever came out of Vega's foul mouth were arrogant words. Just like when Zelan had fought Zelanus, a boundless darkness enveloped Vega. It was the void-like power from the abyss. Yes, Diablo, much like Zelan, or perhaps even more masterfully, controlled the power of imaginary supply. Diablo could freely open the gate, making his strength beyond what existence points could quantify. For another time, Vega instinctively felt fear. He finally realized that Diablo was not an opponent to be taken lightly. The blow to his cheek brought unbearable pain, a pain that seemed to bypass his lack of physical sensation and directly attack his very soul. Diablo coldly remarked that Vega would receive the punishment he deserved. Vega, in desperation, shouted and begged for mercy, abandoning all dignity in an attempt to negotiate further. However, it was too late. Diablo mercilessly refused. Vega, on the verge of death and consumed by despair, couldn't face the end. Driven by his overwhelming fear of death, Vega unleashed all his power in a frantic attempt to escape. His goal wasn't even to defeat Diablo anymore, he just wanted to find any way to survive. Vega began rampaging, and surprisingly, luck was once again on his side. He further fused with the Labyrinth, and unlike before, when he was isolated, Vega now had direct access to the Labyrinth's core energy. Desperate to escape from Diablo and stay alive, Vega started absorbing energy beyond his limits, even as his body began to grotesquely swell. But he didn't stop. The fear of death had unleashed his boundless greed. Vega could feel the endless surge of power filling him, yet he still believed it wasn't enough to face Diablo. His ambition grew larger than simply controlling the Labyrinth. He now wanted to devour the beings hidden in its lower levels as well. His insatiable desire and his unchecked, swelling power were leading him to self-destruction. Under normal circumstances, Vega's actions would be tantamount to suicide, but in his ignorance, he pressed on, frantically seeking to absorb all the power he could to surpass both Diablo and Zelan. The final result was that Vega fully merged with the Labyrinth, transforming into a rampaging monster that absorbed any significant energy reaction as bait, having completely lost his reason. He drooled uncontrollably, screaming madly that he would devour Diablo and prove himself the strongest being. Vega's power kept swelling, almost rendering him an immortal creature. Having also absorbed Zelanus's corpse, Vega inherited Zelanus's dark cells, which made him even more troublesome. The combination of Vega's infinite eater ability and Zelanus's devastator virus, which allowed him to control dark cells down to the smallest detail, proved to be a dangerous synergy. Vega had undoubtedly become an extremely hazardous entity. However, Diablo merely sighed. Despite the sudden surge in Vega's power, from Diablo's perspective, Vega was still a dull and uninteresting opponent. Vega had no conviction, no resolve, and couldn't even control his own desires. He was an immature fool. There was no emotional depth to Vega, and he lacked any sense of beauty or aesthetic. Even Zelanus, who had seemed emotionless, possessed a fiery soul compared to Vega. Diablo found himself regretting his decision to face such a fool, remarking that it might have been better to leave this idiotic opponent to Zijin. Indeed, when it came to choosing opponents, Diablo preferred interesting souls, and Vega was someone in whom he had absolutely no interest. However, regardless of the situation, the fact that Vega had devoured Zelanus and absorbed part of the Labyrinth's powers was a major mistake. Diablo decided it was his responsibility to resolve this issue. He used thought communication to contact the command center and asked about the current status of the Labyrinth. Benimaru reported that there were no major problems, and since Ramiris was currently too flustered to respond, Benimaru was handling communications. Diablo mentioned that one of the evil dragon beasts had escaped to another level and requested that Benimaru take care of it. Benimaru stated that the priority was to restructure the Labyrinth, but as for the evil dragon beast, Hakuru and the 4 great dragon lords were on their way to deal with it. While Benimaru was unsure if they would be victorious, he believed they would be able to buy enough time. As Benimaru mentioned, there wasn't a need to defeat the escaped evil dragon beast. Once Vega's main body was defeated, the rest would be handled. Since resurrection was possible within the Labyrinth, it was fine for the 4 great dragon lords and Hakura to simply delay the threat. After confirming he didn't need to worry, Diablo cut off the communication. Switching perspectives to the command center, it was in a state of complete chaos couple of minutes ago, with Ramiris panicking wildly. Ever since she learned of the situation, she had been shouting nonstop that her labyrinth was going to be devoured, but her yelling alone couldn't fix anything. Under Benimaru's command, various defense measures began to be implemented, thanks to the emergency response manual that Rimuru-sama had prepared for the labyrinth. Benimaru once again marveled at Rimuru-sama's greatness. Shuna agreed, admitting that she had once thought such preparations were excessive, but seeing how chaotic everyone became without Rimuru-sama present, she felt that all the executives needed to seriously reflect. Indeed, Rimuru always considered the worst possible outcomes. While it seemed overly cautious most of the time, it ensured that they were never caught unprepared. Rimuru's principle was that if one always anticipated the worst, they wouldn't panic when the crucial moment arrived. This mindset had led him to build what appeared to be an excessive amount of defensive forces. Yet, even after all those precautions, the current situation still felt severe, making Benimaru and the others realize how much more they needed to mature. Meanwhile, Trainee was calming down the frantic and emotionally overwhelmed Ramiris. Beretta was also chiming in, reminding everyone that Rimuru-sama had always emphasized that each person needed only to focus on fulfilling their own duties. Beretta stated that they should first implement all necessary safety measures. Benimaru agreed and reflected on Rimuru-sama's words. Indeed, merely recalling Rimuru-sama's previous advice allowed everyone to regain their composure. This was the charisma of their god. With Ramiris beginning to pull herself together, the counterattack was about to begin. First, Ramiris focused all her efforts on repairing the labyrinth's functions and isolating Vega, while Hakuru and the 4 great dragon lords were tasked with handling the escaped evil dragon beast. Since the evil dragon beast could infinitely resurrect, whether they could succeed depended on whether Ramiris could isolate it. Benimaru once again recalled Rimuru-sama's previous advice. Rimuru's logic was to first imagine the worst possible scenario, then think about what could be done to prevent it. By identifying the missing elements and addressing them, the worst situation would no longer be the worst. Repeating this process would eventually stabilize the situation. Benimaru pondered that, in this case, the worst possible outcome would be Vega completely taking over the entire labyrinth. However, as long as they could prevent that, his comrades would be safe. If his comrades were safe, everything could be rebuilt. With this conclusion, Benimaru smiled fearlessly. Noticing the change in Benimaru's expression, Ramiris curiously asked why he, as the vice commander, seemed so composed. To clarify, the commander-in-chief was, of course, Ramiris. Benimaru explained that Ramiris should think carefully. The solution wasn't actually that hard to come up with. All they had to do was abandon the labyrinth layers that Vega had already corrupted. Though it would be a significant loss, everything could be rebuilt from scratch. After all, it was all created from zero to begin with. Maybe next time they could make it even better. Ramiris fell into deep thought, realizing that Benimaru's seemingly obvious suggestion might indeed be feasible. Benimaru continued, saying that now wasn't the time to hesitate. The evacuation of the residence was complete, and as Rimuru-sama always emphasized, cutting losses at the right time was crucial. Switching back to Dino's side, the battle against Vega's two evil dragon beasts had turned into a tough struggle. Dino, in particular, was having a hard time since he had no weapon and was running around, desperately asking for help, but everyone ignored him. According to Pico, if Dino had used his full strength from the beginning, they wouldn't have ended up in this situation. This was all Dino's own fault. Dino complained about his heartless comrades, insisting that he was trying his best. At least he was resisting the pain with all his might. Pico was left speechless, remarking that Dino had pain nullification and yet dared to lie about feeling pain. The expressions of Pico and Gracia were full of exasperation. Dino, ever lazy, even in this critical moment, was trying to slack off and let his teammates defeat the enemies. Seeing that his lie was exposed, Dino panicked and claimed that he initially didn't fight hard because he thought Vega was a friend. Trying to cover one lie with another was clearly not a wise move. Pico and Gracia were frustrated by Dino's absurd excuses, declaring that nobody believed him anymore. Even Furuki joined in, and all three criticized Dino's laziness. Under this pressure, Dino finally gave in, admitting that he had no choice but to get serious. With a resigned expression, he looked to the sky, then suddenly adopted a more serious demeanor. Dino activated his divine armaments and revealed his true form. It had been a long time since Dino revealed his true form. Just like Chloe, Dino's entire equipment reached the level of mythical grade, and he simultaneously performed apotheosis, a reckless act of allowing divine authority to reside within his body. This was Dino's strongest battle form, which he had long restrained. Dino's 6 pairs of wings, a mixture of black and white, radiated a divine glow. His attire resembled a black ceremonial robe, and in his hands he held 2 long swords, the radiant Excalibur, a golden holy sword, and Caliban, a dark silver magic sword that sparkled like starlight. Dino was a dual-wielding swordsman who could masterfully handle 2 swords of completely opposite natures. This was Dino's true form. Using Huga had been a disguise, which explained why Ramiris had noticed that Dino wasn't being serious, and why Huga never fully accepted Dino. When wielding his dual swords, Dino's swordsmanship for sure surpassed that of Albert or Glassword, making him the most powerful swordsman in name and fact. Witnessing this, Zijin commented with admiration, noting that the mark he had etched on Dino's soul, end of the dream, had also been broken. Zijin remarked that his intuition had been correct. He had always sensed that he couldn't completely control Dino, and was aware that Dino was hiding his true power. It was for this reason that Zijin had felt comfortable entrusting Apito's safety to him earlier. Dino, now fully prepared, said it was time for him to take over. He raised his dual swords and stepped forward. In the next moment, the 2 evil dragon beasts were instantly shattered. Alright, that's all for this video. The author's note about Diablo being able to use imaginary supply more freely suggests that Diablo can instantaneously harness an immense amount of energy to deliver devastating attacks. But he cannot circulate the energy within his body like Zegan, who has Ramiris cells. However, Diablo excels at managing the backlash of this power, avoiding situations like Benimaru's, where he was left unable to fight. As for Vega, a minor character who has miraculously survived this long, if he were smarter, he might have even become the final boss. Dino, after slacking throughout the novel, has finally stepped up, but compared to his portrayal in the web novel, his performance here is underwhelming, as he only fought 2 evil dragon beasts. In the web novel, Dino's outburst was driven by the danger to Pico and Gracia, not just their complaints, making the change in the light novel a bit disappointing. In our next episode, Vega, driven mad by power and survival instincts, will take even more extreme actions, and we'll see how the group responds. The next episode will be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.